We're streaming on both Rumble, YouTube, and Kick. And let's get into the animal news of the day. So, from Sci News, Tongtianlong limosus, new species of feathered dinosaur discovered in China. A new species of oviraptor dinosaur has been discovered in southern China, dating back approximately 69 million years to the latest Cretaceous period, says an international team of paleontologists. Well, China is a renowned place for finding different species of oviraptorids as well as dromaeosaurs in general. Certain types of hadrosaurs that are a bit distantly related to the different species of duck-billed dinosaurs that we find over in North America. And we find also certain species of tyrannosaurs as well as a bellysaur carnivorous dinosaurs in this region. Really, over in Mongolia, they're a bit more common. Well, this seems to be an unfortunate case. So the team led by Dr. Chang Lu, a paleontologist with the Institute of Geology in Beijing, China, has named the new dinosaur species Tongtianlong limosus, meaning muddy dragon on the road to heaven. Okay, that's a funny one. The I yeah, I think ACDC would probably approve of this.
Well, he's on the road somewhere where he's drowning.
So the ancient creature belongs to a family of feathered dinosaurs called Oviraptorosaurs or Oviraptorosauridae. Interesting. So it doesn't sound like he is a member of Oviraptoridae, which is a distinct subfamily of the Oviraptorosaurs. So that's interesting. Characterized by having short, toothless heads and sharp beaks. It does seem to be that most species of oviraptorids in general, or oviraptorosaurs, were possibly omnivorous, so probably feeding on different species of ferns, flowers, maybe even occasionally seeds, and scavenging from the carcasses of other dinosaurs, and also probably hunting the small mammals and reptiles and amphibians like they coexisted with, possibly even the hatchlings of larger species of dinosaurs. Some including the newly discovered Tongtianlong limosus.
D, I think it's DI 3472. It says, "Hello, nerd. What are you talking about?"
So we're going over a species of oviraptor that was discovered a few years back over in China. So this seems to be quite a distant relative, however, from the more famous oviraptor, considering oviraptor is a member of Oviraptoridae, and this animal is just simply being classified as a member of Oviraptorosauridae in general, which would contain Oviraptoridae, but so far it doesn't seem to be of any other further subfamily. This is also not to be confused with the giant kygnathids such as the Gigantoraptor, which lived much earlier in Mongolia around 90 million years ago. So during the early late Cretaceous period. I'm also talking about a creature that could reach over 25 to 30 feet in length, pushing around 8 to 9 meters. I'm guessing this animal might only reach around 8 feet or pushing maybe 2.4 meters. Okay, so had crests of bone on their heads that were probably used as display structures to attract mates and intimidate rivals like modern day cassowaries. That actually didn't hit me when it came to not necessarily the head structure and comparing them to cassowaries. That theory has been around for a while, but having it where considering cassowaries have some of the most dense legs of any species of bird, you might have had a similar case with certain species of Oviraptorosaurs, not including Gigantoraptor, considering that animal weighed somewhere between 2 to 3 tons. Many certain species, especially of smaller, medium-sized theropod, it could probably break the legs of just by a kick. So, anyway, let's bring up another species of dromaeosaur. Let's see, Zhengyuan long. So, Yuanlong.
He's spelling that to me because I can't spell.
Yeah, this is the very complete specimen of the species of Dromaeosaur, which is related to Velociraptor, from Mongolia, as well as the North American Deinonychus, but it lived much earlier in time. This animal actually coexisted with smaller Microraptorid dromaeosaurs, such as Microraptor itself, Sinornithosaurus, around 125 million years ago in early Cretaceous China. So, it might.
Knobber form says, "What's up?"
We're going over a species of dromaeosaur that coexisted or existed likely in the same region of China that this new species of oviraptorid, or where this new species of oviraptorid was discovered, but it lived much earlier. Let's see. So this animal was probably pushing somewhere around 6.6 feet in length at the most, or around 2 meters. There were certain size estimates pushing between 4 to maybe like 5.2 feet, or pushing somewhere between 1.2 meters and maybe what 1.5 meters. I'm thinking the 5.2 foot realm. But besides that, it was rather large for different species of dromaeosaur, specifically in East Asia at this point. You already had the largest species of raptor or dromaeosaur to exist over in North America around 10 million years prior, being the Utah raptor. And you also had it where there was another large species of raptor called Vectoraptor, not quite as large as Utah raptor, but definitely capable of taking on most species, or um, I don't know, maybe all species of animal today. The Vectoraptor over in England, basically around the same time, maybe a couple million years later. Um, this, I guess, isn't a bad reconstruction of Long. It does also have a more Dromaeosaurus, so like the species from the late Cretaceous of Alberta as well as Alaska, sort of a build in general. When looking at even like the wideness of the sickle claws, so that enhanced claw on their foot, and even the skull structure, and looking at the arms too and the tail, it's likely was pretty similar. So it is interesting how much earlier into the Cretaceous these animals had a very um, unique build before different later species that probably had slightly larger brains would shortly evolve. Well, what I mean by shortly is like another um what 40 million years. What is this? Oh, it's supposed to be the arm of the creature. Wow, yeah, you can see the preserved pigmo fibers or the feathers along the forearm or the ulna and up to like the wrist area. That's interesting. I think this is the forearm. Yeah, yeah, those are probably the claws. That's very much intact. This is not very common for even medium-sized species of dromaeosaurs. We have found evidence of other dromaeosaurs similar to the size of Long, but likely much having a much more of like a gracile sort of a build, being Velociraptor with small pigmo fibers on the certain rare preservations we have discovered of Velociraptor. It is interesting considering how renowned Velociraptor has become, especially since Jurassic Park. We've only found maybe um, somewhere between 2 to 4 specimens, so they're quite rare. The rest are fragmentary remains. I'm referring to more complete skeletons. Okay, let's dive back to
I
the
have a
article.
thought here. Why is it? I mean, they had to have found this stuff before, and just did they not know what they were looking at?
Um, are you talking about like for a velociraptor?
The
Or
feathers.
well, this is of Yuan Long. This animal was only discovered a few years back.
But I meant they found it on other ones.
Um, yeah, they did like Sinornithosaurus, Microraptor, Archaeopteryx. That's even further back into the Jurassic, specifically with Archaeopteryx. So Tongtianlong limosus is a derived oviraptor oviraptorosaur. Oh, never mind. Sounds like he is a member of Oviraptoridae. differentiated from other species by its unique dome-like skull roof. Okay, it's referring to specifically the crest. Made it sound like had pachycephalosaur mutations. And this animal is not closely related to the pachycephalosaurs. The pachycephalosaurs, or the dome-headed carnivorous dinosaurs, were members of the ornithischian lineage of dinosaurs, whereas Tongtianlong and all the other oviraptorosaurs, including the dromaeosaurs, are members of the saurischian lineage. So, a highly convex premaxilla and other features of the skull. A nearly complete three-dimensionally preserved skeleton of Tongtianlong limosus, including a skull and lower jaws, was collected from the Nanxiang Formation in the Gansu area of Jiangxi Province, southern China. It was preserved almost intact, lying on its front with its wings and neck outstretched. Dr. Liu and his colleagues speculate that the animal may have died in this pose after becoming mired in mud 66 to 72 million years ago. Yeah, I mean, that sounds about right. It's very likely, in fact, this isn't the first animal for this to have occurred with. We have found different species of smaller ornithischian dinosaurs, like similar to Leanosaura or Dryosaurus, that have preserved in a similar way, and especially over in different areas of North America. Um, okay, so um, let's bring up another species of animal, the Udanoceratops. So Udanoceratops. Yeah, so this is yeah.
I just thought
Um
it was funny.
this is not your typical species of horned dinosaur or ceratopsian. And this is actually quite a distant relative of the later Triceratops, though it belongs to the same overall broad lineage of ceratopsian dinosaurs. It just belongs to a different subfamily. This creature, however, was probably pushing somewhere around 1,100 to 1,300 pounds, or pushing somewhere between 500 and maybe 600 kilograms. So for ceratopsians in general, yes, it is one of the smaller species. However, for its kind, it was practically one of the largest, possibly the largest at this point. Udanoceratops was found over in Mongolia, so it was likely coexisting with Velociraptor and even the larger species of Tyrannosaurs, such as Tarbosaurus, in the region. So this was around 71 million years ago during the early Maastrichtian stage of the Cretaceous. And despite its look and that original depiction, this animal was most likely not carnivorous and just feeding on different species of ferns and flowers in the area. I'm guessing this could be an oviraptorid. He just seems to have like a shorter crest. And yeah, he's just awkwardly following behind. But this could also be during the dry season, or at least that's what it's trying to depict. This is one of these ceratopsians, yeah, that barely had a frill. It's still noticeable. It's almost like a smaller version of the Protoceratops or even certain members of the Leptoceratopsid lineage, and also quite renowned for its side horn, but it's not necessarily that distinct, um, very sharp point of certain other side horns of different species of ceratopsians. It's actually quite dull compared to other species. I'd say this individual, I mean, I guess for the time it was okay, but there has been a lot more weight added to the overall core of the body and even to the tail. That is a rather short and crooked tail build. Also, I think even the legs would be quite stocky and not as thin and just out of proportion in this instance. It also seems to be he's given really long claws. I don't think that's a rock. Also, you shouldn't have like two claws on those leftover two fingers. But besides that, it's okay. The head looks like it's the best part. And this animal did not have the ability to really grow enhanced horns even on its face, even when it comes to the nasal horn, which usually, if you see on different species of ceratopsians, like different species of centrosaurs, such as Centrosaurus itself, Styracosaurus, you usually have it where it has a massive elongated nasal horn, or it's at least somewhat enhanced in overall width. It's just not very tall, but they might not have any eye socket horns, or the eye socket horns are rather small. In this animal, it's odd. In fact, the lineage that it belongs to in general did not evolve massive weaponry. So they were quite vulnerable, probably really relying on speed and probably camouflage in a lot of instances to get away from different species of predators. Now, if this animal is going up against a velociraptor, all it has to do is just smush it like a pancake. But or we're in Mongolia, so I guess noodles. But
Wait, were they around in the same time period?
it seems so. It was during the late Cretaceous, probably around 71 million years ago. So let's head back. Okay, where were we? Oh. This new dinosaur is one of the most beautiful but saddest fossils I've ever seen. It is? Oh, right. What happened to it? Said team member Dr. Steve Drusate of the University of Edinburgh. But we're lucky that the mud dragon got stuck in the muck because its skeleton is one of the best examples of a dinosaur that was flourishing during those final few million years before the asteroid came down and changed the world in an instant. Yeah, it's still going to be another 3 million years until that happens. I guess looking at the Mesozoic era over a broad scale, that's not long until then. But you're still going to have quite a bit of evolution occur with different species of dinosaurs at this point, or different lineages. Wow. Yeah, that is quite well preserved. Yeah, here's his skull and the rest of the body. That is quite miraculous, especially for an oviraptorid. Yeah, sure, it's not one of the individuals or specimens that we have found intact with a nest full of eggs, but, or even with an embryo, but it's still really good. According to the team, Tongtianlong limosus is the sixth species of oviraptorosaur named from the Nanchang Formation. Huh. We do have a wide range of different species of dromaeosaurs that come from the Nanchang Formation as well as other formations in the region. All of these have been described over the past 5 years, include Banhai, Genzusaurus, Hengshosaurus, Nankengya, and Huanonsaurus.
How come they don't stick to Greek and Latin for their names?
I think one non-source might be Greek, but I might have to double check. The discovery of the new oviraptor dinosaur further indicates that the Gansu area of southern China is a most productive locality of oviraptor dinosaurs and has a huge diversity of oviraptorosaurs from the late Cretaceous. It will provide important information on the study of evolution, distribution, and behavior of oviraptor dinosaurs. So yeah, I mean, this was quite miraculous in what we saw with this specific specimen, how it died, and also just having a very distinct build in general from different species of oviraptorids. So, um, I guess let's bring up another species of dinosaur, the Lishansaurus.
What?
Lishansaurus. Leshansaurus. Yeah, that's not him. Not even close. In fact, you had stegosaurs around at this point that Lishansaurus existed, but it was not a member of the Spinosaur lineage, and Spinosaurs had not evolved yet. They might start occurring somewhere around 140 million years ago during the first 3 million years of the Cretaceous, but not during the mid Jurassic. There also doesn't seem to be really any evidence of Spinosaurus inhabiting China, which is also where Lashanosaurus is from. There were different species of stegosaurs that we have found from the late Jurassic and early Cretaceous of China. This does not seem to be one of them, however. Still probably not him. It seems to be more on the lines with like a weird concavinator, which is a member of the Metrocanthosaur lineage of megalosaurs. And Lashanosaurus is a member of the Megalosauridae lineage of theropod dinosaurs. But this animal still looks a bit off. It is closer. That's definitely not him. This is a raptor. What is? Sheesh. This is quite odd today. Why is he also munching on a fern? And his fingers seem far too like his claws seem far too large compared to his body size. It looks like somebody mixed a Caudipteryx with like a smaller Therizinosaur or an Alvarezsaur and then stuck in another Dromaeosaur. That's very far off. Okay, this might be closer. They definitely added a lot of emphasis to him. Um, wow, and even the stegosaurs. It's definitely supposed to be representing some horrible dry season in, I guess, an arid region of mid Jurassic China. So this is taking place around 166 million years ago during the whoa. This is supposed to be a Daspletosaurus on a Centrosaur carcass, not a Megalosaur. This is quite odd.
Hey,
The
I'm
yeah,
trying here.
the other one was good.
Oh,
Actually, this is as close to the time that Tyrannosaurs evolved. But you already did have a wide range of different species of stegosaurs, not just roaming different areas of Asia, but even North America, Africa, and even Europe. In fact, they even reached certain areas of South America. Antarctica and Australia, it doesn't look like it. Possibly Antarctica. There might be certain fragmentary remains of stegosaurs, but not so much when it comes to Australia. Though Lashanosaurus is a smaller species of megalosaur, but it's not necessarily as tiny as like the different oviraptorids we were looking at earlier, or the other dromaeosaurs in general. It's pushing somewhere around 14 feet in length, or maybe 4.2 meters, and probably weighed upwards of 550 to 600 pounds, or a little over 250 kilograms.
yes.
Yeah, no, that's not a bad representation of the Lashanosaurus. They definitely, I don't think this is Lashanosaurus. It could be, however, considering he did coexist with the club spiked tail Shanosaurus. Okay, that is very possible. This is just from an older depiction in like the 1980s or 1990s. I mean, even the Shunosaurus technically isn't bad, but I would say it has a bit too much of like a camel sort of a depiction, at least in the others in the background. I mean, their feet look okay. The Lashanosaurus looks a little too stubby. This is a Tyrannosaur skull, I believe. I don't believe this is a Lashanosaurus. We have found parts of the skull of Lashanosaurus, but I don't. Hmm. Yeah, it looks too Tyrannosaur like.
That's it.
I'll do a double check. Yeah, I mean that definitely is a good depiction. So is that. That's really good. It's definitely adding a lot of size. I'm not sure. He looks immense. I mean, this animal is like the size of a fat black bear. Um,
Wait, really?
yeah, I mean, you can have certain black bears over in eastern Canada, even certain parts of the eastern United States.
I just meant he looks huge.
That can reach that size in the fall. No, he does. That's why I'm wondering: is this Lashanosaurus or is it a larger species of Megalosaur or Allosaur? Considering he does not seem small compared to those other stegosaurs. Now, there were certain species of stegosaurs that maybe also reached close to the same size of Lashanosaurus. Might have weighed slightly more, but sticking like somewhere between the 13 to 18-foot realm, or pushing between 4 to around 5.2 meters. So it's not necessarily surprising if he's going after much smaller herbivores. Yeah, it's definitely not him. Whoops. Oh, I think we were already done with this. I just thought I'd bring another one up. Okay, let's head forward or to another part of the Mesozoic. So from Sci News, Savannosaurus aleatorum, new dinosaur discovered in Australia. New genus and species of sauropod dinosaur from the mid Cretaceous has been discovered in western Queensland, Australia. That is a very oddly depicted sauropod. Has massive physical issues. What is going on here with that core and the legs? It almost has like a reptile sort of stance. And um, hmm, the feet, especially the front feet of the younger individual, they should not have distinct toes. It should look like a hoof with a distinct thumb claw. And yeah, it's very far off. I'm almost looking at like a
And
sort of
what
camel elephant sort of foot.
one neck is thicker than the other.
Yeah, even it could probably add more muscle. And the tail is extremely short compared to its body size. It's almost like a like certain breeds of dog or like maybe even a pig to a certain extent. I don't know, a pig, I think they're pretty thin. And then I'm not sure. Oh, he's just swimming in the background. I think there's like an ornithopterid. So the plant-eating sauropod dinosaur is called Savannosaurus aleatorum and is thought to have lived about 95 million years ago. A member of the sauropod subgroup called Titanosaurs, it was approximately 45 feet or 14 meters long, roughly half the length of a basketball court. This is a small species of Titanosaur. Even for Australia, this is tiny. Now, this is right at the time when you have many species or many lineages of the Titanosaur branch die off, especially over in South America. Australia, you already had die offs occurring slightly earlier into the Cretaceous, like probably at least a little more than 5 to 7 million years beforehand. Like Australotitan at this point has already disappeared, and that was a 40-ton sauropod. So it had a long neck, relatively short tail. Oh, well, still though, that tail looks far too thin and just out of proportion. Very wide hips and widely spaced stocky limbs with 5 toes on each foot. Okay, there comes to a point where I'm having trouble believing in this. This one looks a bit more realistic, but um, yeah, this is just a very reptilian sort of a, sauropod. Somebody just was either just wanted to put out, like, the 1920s or 1930s representation to an extent. Um, yeah, I can't think of what else. Or really likes reptiles. So with hips at least 3 feet or 1 meter wide and a huge barrel-like rib cage, Savannosaurus aleatorum is the most rotund sauropod we have found so far, said Dr. Stephen Porapot from Uppsala University in Sweden and the Australian Age of Dinosaurs Museum in Queensland, Australia, who, along with colleagues, describes the dinosaur in the October 20 issue of the journal Scientific Reports. Okay, um, okay, let's bring up a Streptospondylus. Streptospondylus.
Yes or no?
Yep. This is another species of possibly Allosaurid that existed over in the northern hemisphere about 160 million years ago. So this animal was, in fact, it might have been from England. So It's also about like a medium to or small to medium sized species of allosaur, probably reaching around 20 feet in length. They're pushing 6 meters and just weighing around a ton or pushing 2,000 pounds. So it was likely feeding on smaller species of sauropod in the region, different species of ornithischian dinosaurs. It doesn't seem to have fed on different species of fish like later species of Spinosaur would, but you already had different species of neotheropods back in the early Jurassic and the late Triassic of North America, Europe, probably even South America and Africa that were feeding on fish.
Okay, I just got a strange one.
Yeah, that's not him. Um, yeah, that's the Facilosuchus. That's strange. Yeah, chasing that Lesemisaurus prosauropod. They lived much earlier, like back around 211 million years ago in Argentina. This is not Streptospondylus. It is a relative, Streptospondylus. Um,
Oh, oops. Hold on. What about this guy?
Oh, well, since they're both also, um, ending in spineless, I might have to correct myself. I believe they're both megalosaurs because I haven't heard of a species of allosaur with the name Spondylus in its name. So it's likely a megalosaur. Okay, so this is one of the Walking with Dinosaurs models, and from the third episode, and at the time, it was not as there wasn't as much analysis done on the overall anatomy of Eustreptospondylus. So this is a close relative of the Streptospondylus. Now we picture the animal as having a much more narrow sort of a skull. Eustreptospondylus also wasn't very large either. It was also pushing between 16 to 23 feet in length, or anywhere between 4.8 meters and probably around 7 meters. Oh, yeah, this is actually a decent reconstruction of that megalosaur, though it almost has like a megaraptorid sort of a build to it. They're giving very long claws compared to many species of other carnivores at the time, though it does have a very sleek sort of a build. Yeah, I think it looks good. Also, the megalosaurs in general, like, even if you're comparing it with certain dinosaurs, like, whoa, okay, here's the thing. It is a dinosaur, but it's living much later. And well, okay, Brontornis. This could be a carnivorous terror bird from the Eocene epoch. So this is over 38 million years ago. Okay, well, it's didn't coexist with the other non-avian dinosaurs, so essentially this is just a much larger terrestrial bird. But the fact that it came under this dinosaur's name is a bit odd, but not too surprising. Yeah, this animal. Oh, yeah, I think it seems to be that many species of carnivorous dinosaur, like the megalosaurs, would roam the coasts of Jurassic England, different areas of Switzerland, Germany, Belgium, over 165 million years ago, and just look for beached ichthyosaur carcasses, so the dolphin-like reptiles that inhabited the shallow seas at the time. Certain beach carcasses of the long-skulled pliosaurs, even the long-necked plesiosaurs, and different species of the cephalopod ammonites. So there was a wide range of food that could wash ashore. So in some cases, they weren't even hunting after the different species of dinosaurs, though technically they would have to occasionally.
There's a lot of Eustreptospondylus.
Yeah, he's a bit more renowned. However, I am quite surprised as to how many of this species first popped up. Okay, let's head over to the article. So it lived alongside or with this Australian species of sauropod. It lived alongside at least two other types of sauropod, the Diamantinosaurus and Wintona titan. This is probably towards the very end of both of these species lineages. So as well as other dinosaurs, including ornithopods, armored ankylosaurs, whoa, nodosaurs. Now, if it's just referring to ankylosaur morphs in general, yes, that would be true. Ornithopods 95 million years ago in Australia are not very common. As you head further back, like before 102 million years ago, 102 to like 112 million years ago, with animals like Metabarosaurus, they become much more common. And the carnivorous theropod Australopithecus. Yeah, this is also quite late for Australopithecus. Even the other two species, I think this was just living at the very end of these titanosaurs' reign. Savannosaurus elliottorum was unearthed in 2005 by David Elliott, co founder of the Australian Age of Dinosaurs Museum. The disarticulated skeleton was found with a single siltstone concretion in the Whiten Formation. We find it was probably Montebarosaurus that was discovered over in the Whiten Formation, a geological deposit approximately 95 million years old. It depends on where you're looking at in these different fossil formations. You can be in the same fossil formation, but um, you can be looking at an animal that's 4 million years older than another. Um, okay, so let's actually bring up another species of sauropod. Okay, so the Drusilosaurus. So Drusil
DRUES or DREUS?
Drus. Um, Ilasaurus. Okay, so this is a species of sauropod, I believe, in which we have found at least a couple of, or one of the shoulder blades and a couple of the ribs, and belongs to the Titanosaur lineage of sauropods. It was probably reaching somewhere around 60 to 75 feet in length, or pushing probably 22 to 23 meters, and probably weighed over 30 tons. Probably actually pushing like the Australotitan size of 30 to 40 tons. Yeah, these reconstructions are okay. I think the feet might be a bit off. However, this animal was a lot more, it was just a lot thinner compared to like the stockier looks that it's giving in these depictions, especially when it comes to the legs. This is better. The youngsters are being given a like 1910s, 1920s sort of a look. Like they have that sort of hill type of a build when it comes to their back vertebrae and even their tail and how it's sloped. And looking at the neck, also their legs are too short compared to their body size. Yeah, this is another reconstruction. It is very possible that this animal had armor on its core, though the illustrator also added those osteoderms, which are a bit more common on other lineages of sauropod dinosaurs like the diplodocids, but certainly is likely to have occurred on this animal. It, I think even the skull was quite different from different diplodocids, but still a good drawing. Okay, this is definitely not a species of sauropod. This is a species of, I think, Erythrosuchid from the Triassic period. So this was over 215 million years ago, and not even coexisting with different species of sauropods, likely prosauropods or the sauropods' ancestors at the time. But
I don't know why that came up.
also having a bit of like a rhynchosaur sort of a skull structure, at least towards the tip of the snout. I mean, these are interesting animals. They're just not coexisting with the sauropod at this time. Oh yeah, this one looks good. They definitely added a bit more emphasis on the neck. Well, also they gave it that distinct throat pouch. Yeah, this animal also in this depiction looks like it's capable of defending itself. I don't believe there are any species of dinosaurs, at least where this animal was found, that we know of that would have hunted it at the time. So he's a bit of a loner, at least when it comes to predator prey relationships at the moment. And yes, this was an herbivore and not a carnivore, despite how it looks. So it's feeding on larger species of conifer trees over in the late Cretaceous. So, after almost 10 years of painstaking work, the hard concretion around the bones was finally removed to reveal one of the most complete Cretaceous sauropod skeletons ever found in Australia. More excitingly, the remains belong to a new genus and species of dinosaur. Okay. Well, we found a decent amount of the animal, but unfortunately, we did not find the skull. So, yes, somewhat decent proportion. We've got major part of the upper arm bone or the humerus, part of the shoulder scapula. The toes are pretty much intact when it comes to the 4 feet to an extent, and seems like a single phalange over on the hind foot, few of the back vertebrae, one cervical vertebrae, and two caudal vertebrae are along the tail. Part of the pelvis, much of the pelvis is intact. I think that's it. I don't think it's mentioned so far that we found any skin fragments of this species.
So its neck could have been like 5 feet long.
Yeah, it seems that way. Around 95 million years ago, at the time that Savannosaurus aleatorum was alive, global average temperatures were warmer than they are today. However, it was quite cool at the poles at certain times, which seems to have restricted the movement of sauropods at polar latitudes. Paleontologists suspect that Savannosaurus aleatorum's ancestor was from South America, but that it could not and did not enter Australia until 105 million years ago. At this time, global average temperatures increased, allowing sauropods to traverse landmasses at polar latitudes. Um, yeah, there was something specifically going on with the continents, but just giving the reason as to why the sauropods were able to migrate based on warmer temperatures, I think is um not a very good point. There's only so much you can get from temperature. I mean, it can have a massive effect on a species, but it's just when it comes to migration at this point, and specifically with continents connecting to each other, also taking sea level into account, um, there just needs to be more to it. This pattern of climate controlled distribution was actually evident in other animals and plants that lived at the same time as Savannosaurus aleatorum during the mid Cretaceous in Australia, said co author Dr. Benjamin Keir from Uppsala University. However, our analysis provides the first compelling evidence that giant herbivorous dinosaurs were subject to these same environmental constraints, and that this signature of periodic transpolar migration was likely a broader characteristic of Australian faunas and floras from that time. Yeah, you did have, I mean, throughout the Mesozoic, different small periods of time where you had allosaurs migrating from North America over into Europe, different species of coelophysids or earlier species of theropod dinosaurs, like back in the Triassic period, moving from North America or Africa over into South America. And in this case, at different points like South America, Antarctica, and Australia, and likely even Asia, um, you had different species of sauropods moving in between these three continents. So there was a lot going on during the Jurassic and early Cretaceous periods. Okay, so this was good to see. Let's head forward in time. So from the SmithsonianMag.com, Gen 2 penguins are actually four different species, scientists say, revealing they're not quite winners of. Okay, let's keep going. A new study indicates that the adaptable birds evolved into distinct lineages as isolated populations shifted to match their environmental conditions over time. The work has implications for how conservationists assess threats to Gen 2s. Hey, here's the Gen 2s. So these penguins are native to different areas of southeastern or the coasts of southeastern Argentina and um, believe a northern region of the Antarctic Ocean, at least pointed towards Argentina. And they're probably also weighing not much more than 15 to 18 pounds or a little over um, 7 kilograms. So, with white bodies, dark backs, and distinctive light patch above their eyes, Gentoo penguins might all look the same at first glance. But according to new research pulling together physical, behavioral, and genetic evidence, the bird should be split into four species. We already knew of three. In fact, one of the species, I believe, was found by a student of Carl Linnaeus. So it was an English scientist, but it was back in 1781. I think there was another species found in the 1800s and then another found during the 1900s. So I guess this is the most recent species. So the differences are not immediately obvious to the eye. Juliana Aviana, biologist at Chile's Andres Bello National University, tells Smithsonian Magazine. When you look more closely, says ecologist Jane Younger of the University of Tasmania in Australia, at their genomes, measurements, ecology, and environmental niches, it becomes clear that they are following different evolutionary paths. In late April, Viana, Younger, and 20 other researchers published a study in the journal Communications Biology, arguing that Gentoo penguins are not a uniform group. The scientists suggest that three subspecies of Gentoo that are recognized today should all be full species in their own right. They also propose adding a fourth species that has never been recognized before. Three of the four species are at risk of habitat loss as uh I actually thought it was going to blame it on some habitat degradation. Um, okay. So several, including Kinstrap and Adelie penguins, are largely dependent on krill. Yeah, it does seem to be for almost all penguin species do feed on some species of krill, and then they will feed on different species of squids. In some cases, smaller types of fish. Not really being very herbivorous. They're quite carnivorous.
Do they go fishing or do they go grilling when the whales
They will. They actually somewhat, like depending on the species, do rely on the whales or even certain species of dolphins to push the krill further towards the shallower end of the coast. I think it's especially renowned with the South African penguin. Well, specifically referred to as the African penguin. So over on the coast of Namibia and South Africa. These shrimp like crustaceans rely on sea ice for shelter and food as they eat algae that grow in and on it. So, Gentoo penguins, however, appear to be adapting well. As flexible eaters, they have diets that are not entirely centered on krill. They've been expanding south as uh, warming temperatures make more habitats available to them. And Gentoo penguins, especially along the western Antarctic peninsula, have been growing. All of this that has led some experts to consider gentoos a rare beneficiary of. Um, we've seen it where
what
certain.
are you reading?
Well, it just keeps pushing the agenda. Um, let's see. Okay. So to paint this new picture, skipping a bit forward, of Gentoos, the researchers sequenced the genomes of 64 penguins from 10 breeding colonies spread throughout the Gentoo's full geographic range. Beyond genetic analysis, they looked at the bird's physical measurements, coloration, feeding behavior, diet, breeding timing, and vocalizations. The result they found is four distinct penguin species separated by geography. Northern Gentoo, or Pygoscelis papua, lives on the Falkland and Martello Islands of South America. These penguins thrive in the warmer and saltier waters north of the polar front, along with the eastern Gentoo, or Pygoscelis tenuata, which dwells on the sub-Antarctic Crozet, Marion, and Macquarie Islands. Wonder if it's adjacent to like certain Macronini penguins. So farther south, the newly described species Pygocellus kerguelensis forms the southeastern lineage. Its small population evolved on the subantarctic Kerguelen Islands in the southern Indian Ocean. Finally, the southernmost and most populous species, Pygocellus ellsworthi, lives in icy conditions below the polar front in coastal Antarctica, the Antarctic Peninsula, and South Georgia Island. Wow, it has a large okay, I think if you're viewing it as one species, but you have 4 here. Um, yeah, 3 which had already been discovered. Just seems to have quite a large range considering you find on the Georgia island the king penguin. The species' body sizes become progressively smaller the closer they live to the South Pole. That's interesting considering the largest species of penguin lives over not necessarily at the South Pole, really along the coast, but of Antarctica. And there really aren't any penguins that live at the South Pole. They also show distinct adaptations. The southern gentoo, for instance, which lives in the coldest area, has genes tied to temperature regulation, storing fat and perceiving light. The eastern gentoo has genes that might support saving energy during long dives in low productivity waters, while the northern gentoo's genetic changes are centered on digestion and may support foraging behavior. This study highlights how amazingly adaptable Gentoo penguins are, so much so that populations that become isolated can become specialized to thrive in different contexts, says Heather Lank, a quantitative ecologist at Stony Brook University who has researched Gentoo penguins and was not involved in the new study. This might be conflict, but it might be just socializing. No, it doesn't say here. Some of the study's authors had previously proposed splitting the Gentoo penguin to as many as 6 separate species, but the new paper represents a consensus based on the latest data. According to a statement from the University of California, Berkeley, Younger co published one of those earlier papers arguing for Gentoo species for 4 Gentoo species in 2020. Her previous work, she says, showed that Gentoo penguins should be split. This new study gives us a much deeper evolutionary and ecological explanation for that split. Yeah, in many cases, you do have it where a massive difference in climate, weather patterns, um, also the different food sources are going to have a massive impact on a species and also the size of the area, too. Technically, the newly described species are now valid, Vienna says, but she expects they will spark scientific discussion. I guess debate onto whether or not they're valid genre. So the next step is for these species to be assessed and accepted by major avian taxonomic committees and incorporated into official global bird species lists. I actually didn't realize that these things existed. Avian taxonomic committees. So apparently there's a lot that this penguin or skipper has to go through. Separating the Gentoo penguin into 4 species has implications for how experts count and manage the birds. Dividing the species would suggest that we should be tracking these separately, and the gains in some areas cannot be thought of to offset declines in other areas. While the southern Gentoo of the Antarctic Peninsula might expand its range in the coming years, the other lineages are poorly monitored or in decline, and those on the subarctic islands are projected to lose habitat with. Right. Gentoo penguins on the Falkland Islands were hit with avian influenza in 2024. Yeah, I heard about that. It's just that it was being pushed with the whole avian flu everywhere, unless this is a completely separate disease. So, um, I could, I'll probably do a double check on this, but like to see if there was a major population decline in general. And the population on Macquarie Island is dwindling. When scientists considered all these groups to be the same species, they overlooked threats that might affect just one lineage. Recognizing these distinct species is particularly urgent to ensure that vulnerable populations are properly monitored, assessed, and protected. Oh, that's it. Hmm. Okay, well, there's definitely a lot that they got out of these four penguins. So we'll give everybody a minute to put any comments about prehistoric to current animals in the chat. All right, thanks for joining everybody. And from prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guy Live Daily News. We are streaming on both Rumble, YouTube, and Kick. And remember that nothing is better than all animals all the time.